Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Michael Rosenberg, the Managing Director of the McCarter Theatre Center in Princeton. Mike, thanks for joining us today. I'm excited about this conversation because the theater, the arts, culture, and the intersection of those things with the business community and innovation is super exciting. So pleased to have you here.
So today I get to work with Artistic Director Sarah Rasmussen to co-lead the nonprofit theater company McCarter, which is located in Princeton, New Jersey. And together we're tasked with working with our board and working with our staff to run the company and bring exciting projects to life, tell invigorating stories that resonate with our community. And I've been lucky to really have spent my entire career doing that and doing it more in an entrepreneurial or startup sort of way. Some friends of mine and I, in our early 20s, started a theater company in Manhattan. That really allowed me to try and experiment on some things in the off-Broadway world in New York. And then what we discovered in doing that company was we were able to raise a lot of money, not from donors, not from ticket sales, because we were in a small 99-seat theater, but by partnering with companies and really asking them, what is the problem you're trying to solve and how do we help you do that? And so we were very successful working with film and television companies who wanted access to some of the new up-and-coming writers that were in New York at the time. And that really funded our company and new work development for years. After that, I pivoted and went to work for a for-profit company that was doing Broadway shows, but really interesting ones. We did Grey Gardens, the musical, a musical based on a documentary, not a traditional place you find source material looking through the documentary racks. And then after doing that for a couple of years, I pivoted again and went to work co-running the La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego. And that was in 2008. So again, a time of great change in the American theater as we were experiencing the economic meltdown at that time. And that was fun. Over 9 years, we really thought about where do we want to be and how do we get there? And so we were able to make a number of investments in my first 3 or 4 years there that then really paid off in the second half of my time there in terms of work going to Broadway, work going to be seen around the world. And then also creating a new line of business for the company based on emerging technologies mixed with site-specific and immersive types of performance.
That is exciting. That's a really, really rich background there, Mike. So tell me, when you say co-running a theater, what does that mean?
Yeah, so the American theater is mostly run in the nonprofit world with a business model with a dual leadership structure. So you have an artistic director and a managing director, and we have to work together to run the company. The artistic director primarily focuses on art. The managing director focuses primarily on commerce. But you can't really do one without the other, right? Every artistic decision has economic implications. Every economic choice has artistic implications. So you work together to figure it out.
Got it. Well, that's really interesting because there's few other organizations or companies that really run like that, right? That's got to be obviously tricky.
Well, I find it a model that I work very well in. I like having a partner. I like having a team that we can bounce ideas off of, that we work together. Again, we have our areas of expertise and focus. I'm not giving Sarah notes on rehearsals. Should that actor stand there or there? Should they wear this costume or that costume? But again, those all have economic implications. And so it's good.
Got it. And so what brought you back to New Jersey or Princeton or McCarter?
Yeah, what was attractive to me about McCarter was it was clear when they put the job posting out that McCarter was an organization on the cusp of making change and really big transformational change. The two people that do the majority of the programming at McCarter, at the time I was hired, there's a gentleman, Bill Lockwood, who has had this incredibly amazing career presenting artists, dance companies, musicians, spoken word from all over the world. He's been doing that for 60 years. Next year will be his 60th anniversary of doing that at McCarter. And Emily Mann, who was the artistic director when I got here, had been in that position for 30 years. And it was clear that the organization was going to need to make a leadership change. And then as a part of that leadership change, that would probably include a new artistic vision. A new artistic vision would mean needing to work in new ways and support that vision in new ways. And so the business model and the structure of the company would need to change. And so I'm lucky. I've spent my career doing that at different companies. And so this was an exciting opportunity to do that at a theater with such a history, with such relevance as McCarter, and also the unique position of being this close to New York City.
Right, got it. Even though the weather's not as perfect as San Diego.
Well, people say that all the time. Like, why would you ever leave that San Diego weather? I'm like, listen, I work in the theater, so 9 days out of 10, I'm in a dark room somewhere. So the weather doesn't really matter.
Got it. All right. So talk to us about the intersection of the arts and innovation, and how you see things and how you've seen things in the past and today and going forward.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of commonality between the creative process in theater and the creative process in a startup or a pharma tech company or a tech company, right? You're sort of thinking about, what is the problem I'm trying to solve and what are the steps I need to take to do it? Very similar with a creative process, right? A writer has an idea, I want to tell this story. And then we work together to help them figure out the best way to tell that story. And sometimes that means rewrites. Sometimes that means getting up on your feet and seeing what works in space and time. Some of that is playing around with design, lighting design, costume design, set design that helps tell the story. Like a lot of my friends in the sciences, right? We hit that roadblock, right? You hit that wall where you can't figure out how to take the next step. Then there's that moment that the Greeks, call the eureka moment, the aha moment, where it's like, oh, I get it. I see how to do this. And that it's fun. You should do that sometime. You should have a scientist and a playwright together talking about their creative processes, and you will be shocked at how similar they are.
Got it. And so obviously creativity is important and innovation is important in the art space. Now, there's been more and more technology, you just mentioned tech companies in the arts. How do you see that developing, or how has it developed over the years?
Yeah, I think it's exciting because, that technology development really started with how do we get more bells and whistles inside the theater to make the story more exciting or more emotional or to pull people in. And then I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, we've really seen that technology start to get into the theater that's about helping tell the story outside of the four walls of the theater as well, right? So whether it's developing TikToks or little videos that can be used on social media to sort of advertise or entice people about the story, or whether it's literally finding ways to record the project and syndicate it, either online or on TV channels or movie theaters, things like that. Got
it. So talk to us about the pandemic and how that has affected theaters nationwide, globally, right? And what it has meant to McCarter, how you guys responded, and let's talk more about that.
Yeah, this was an incredible moment that I don't think any of us were prepared for. This idea that we were going to go dark, we were going to shut our buildings down for more than 2 years is a shocking moment for folks. And so many of us used that time to figure out different ways of operating. Some of us in the short term started broadcasting, right? We sort of turned ourselves into little TV or film companies, took projects that were in our archives and broadcast them, or began to create projects digitally through Zoom or through, when we were able to, get people in a room together, through some dedicated filming to keep telling stories, right? Like the reason we exist is that humans are an innately humans need to be with each other. We need to tell stories. We need to connect. And so During COVID, we pivoted to figure out the best ways to make that connection. And then as we started to come out of COVID, thinking about what our role is in bringing our communities back together, reestablishing those human bonds, and how we can do that in ways that other community organizations can't do.
Got it. And so as far as the innovations at McCarter, name one example of what you guys pulled together. And then let's look nationwide. What have you seen that was really fascinating?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm proudest of at McCarter during the pandemic times is when Sarah Rasmussen, our artistic director, first arrived in Princeton, she started talking about this incredible program that the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright Paula Vogel had created during the shutdown, where Paula felt like, look, I am hugely at risk for getting this virus and for not surviving this virus. So if I'm going to go out, what are the plays I wish I had seen before I'm gone? And so Paula has been the dean of the American playwriting farm teams for decades now. And so she pulled together a number of playwrights that were not necessarily well known, and just began recording Zoom readings of their plays. Sarah said, I think we should step in and help her with that and see if we can't amplify the work that she's doing. So Sarah made a couple of phone calls, and the next thing you know, we were committed to a 2.5-year deal with Paula Vogel to select 4 plays a year to record and then push out on the internet. And so the short-term goal of that is for audience members, right? You can see readings of these really exciting plays that you may have never seen before. But the other goal of the program is to really help diversify the American canon of theatrical work. And so part of the audience for these readings are artistic directors and theater companies around the world to say, look, these are great plays. You should consider programming them on your stages when we're back open again. And educators too, that the American theatrical canon is bigger than O'Neill and Williams and Inge. There are these contemporary writers, women, people of color, people from different backgrounds with incredible stories that are all part of the American tapestry. And so this was a way of getting to educators too and say, look, you don't just have to teach Long Day's Journey into Night. You can do some of these other plays like Bull Rusher that are exciting and may also show your students stories that they recognize themselves in. Right, it's hard for my 16-year-old kid looks at some of these Shakespeare plays or these Tennessee Williams plays, and he doesn't see himself. He doesn't recognize the stories that they're telling. And yet, what these writers are doing today, absolutely identification broadly.
What was one or two of those plays?
I think Bull Rusher is I think a very, very exciting play by the writer Issa Davis. I think the way she crafted that story, the way she highlights what's happening, it's stunning. It's stunningly beautiful. Also, the way she incorporates music into the piece, I think is a very dynamic way of telling stories or augmenting the stories or deepening the emotional impact of the stories. It's great. I can't wait to see, as we all reopen, how these plays get produced on stage in real life.
That's exciting. So what about, what theaters do you look up to, or what theater across the country did something really remarkable during the pandemic that you sort of really impressed with?
Yeah, I think, there are companies like Pasadena Playhouse that actually moved forward and created a video streaming platform on their own. Many of the platforms that existed pre-COVID don't quite work for theater in the same way. I think too, the Steppenwolf Theater, which even pre-COVID, Steppenwolf in Chicago had been experimenting with different ideas on the subscription model. It's funny that as all of these, sort of for-profit companies are now adopting the subscription model beyond gyms and Netflix, right? You can buy a taco subscription to Taco Bell right now. Those subscription models were all born in the theaters and the orchestras and the opera companies of America. And so now it's interesting, us nonprofit performing arts centers need to adapt our subscription models and come up with new ways of enticing folks to come join us.
Right. Well, let's get into that. Post-pandemic, I know it's still with us, but hopefully it'll be in our past one of these days completely. What are you seeing as sort of the trends or your vision, first of all, post-pandemic, but then the trends that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that sort of traditional core subscriber audience, which was already declining on an annual basis at most companies pre-COVID. I mean, that decline has just accelerated greatly. I think of people like my mom, who spent her life going to the theater and going to concerts and things. During COVID, my mom has figured out how to watch her favorite artists online, sometimes live, as they've done streamings and stuff. And so to for my mom to take a risk of going out and sitting in a theater for 2 hours with strangers, masked, vaccinated, all of that stuff, that has to be some kind of incredible concert for her to leave the house to go do, because now she has access to stuff all over the world from the comfort of her own living room. I think at the same time, we've seen audiences fall out of the habit of going regularly to the theater. And so we're going to have to communicate with folks in a different way to get them to jumpstart that habit again, remind them of why it's fun and exciting, and you see your neighbors and you can have a drink. I think one of the trends that we're looking at is the way we're going to entice those subscribers back into the building is by creating an environment that you want to stay in, right? Pre-COVID, it was like I got off work, I got the train to Princeton, I jump in my car, I meet my spouse at 7:45 as the lights are going down, the curtains going up. And as soon as the show's over, we jump in the car and we go home. Well, now our audience isn't commuting into the city in the same way. Now we can say, no, meet across the street for dinner, come early, have a drink in our bar, really take a little bit of time, see your neighbors, make some new friends, which are all goals that people have as we come out of the pandemic.
Right. And I think obviously the theater should benefit from that surge, right, of people wanting experiences.
That's right. That's right. And interestingly, what we've seen, and this is consistent with many of our peer theaters across the country, 40% of the audience on any given night at McCarter, 40% of the people in that room have not been to McCarter in the last decade. And so as we do a little bit of audience research, little focus groups with them to figure out, so what made you, like you've never been here before, what made you say, hey, I'm going to go see this show? A lot of it has to do with people wanting to develop new habits. They've been locked inside for a couple of years. They want to do things that are in their community. Again, they want to find ways of meeting their neighbors and being social. And, a 368 seat venue. We also have an 1,100 seat venue. Those are great opportunities to meet new people and to see your friends and reconnect.
Yeah, no, I get that. Clearly, a lot of pent up demand, right? And that's
right.
That's it's just got to be a great opportunity, right? Just to sort of
right.
get people, exposed to what's going on.
Right.
So talk to us about what's next, right? I know you mentioned a great show coming up, a great musical. Talk about that, but also talk to us about other things down the road and some of the things you're working on.
Yeah. So one of the things that McCarter is doing as we come out of the pandemic, right? We're looking to see how do we, do more with less, because ticket sales have been non-existent, donations have been down, but also how do we give artists an opportunity to further develop their story and to share that story more broadly? And so we've really leaned into, on the theater side of our business, we've really leaned into collaborations. So in January, we produced a new musical called Dreaming Zenzile. This is a musical that started at Repertory Theater of St. Louis in Missouri, right? And then came to McCarter. After McCarter, it went to Boston for a couple of weeks at Arts Emerson. And then it will open this spring off Broadway at New York Theater Workshop in Manhattan, right? And so all of those theaters together shared the costs of the scenery, the props, the costumes. All of those theaters shared a bit of the rehearsal expenses as the director and the team were figuring out, how the show looks, where do people stand, what are they wearing, those sorts of things. And then for the playwright and the star of the show, Somi, right, she's getting to work on that piece in 4 different markets and really getting to be seen by 4 different markets worth of people. It's very exciting. And
Yeah,
so,
no, that was a great show, by the way.
right, really, and I think, um, that show will have a life beyond New York Theater Workshop, whether it continues to tour across the country or whether it moves to sort of a sit-down run in a major city somewhere. I think the possibilities are exciting. And just like anybody else who develops IP, all of those theaters will share in royalties should it go into some sort of for-profit arena.
That's great. But
Now,
tell us, how
yeah, go
was
ahead.
that done in the past? How was it formally done? 'Cause for those of us not familiar with theater.
Yeah, so for McCarter, McCarter spent more time doing plays that had been done before, right? And so we would do those plays, and it would exist only at McCarter and only for 3 or 4 weeks of a performance. Some exceptions to that, right? McCarter is the home for the Tony Award-winning play Vanya, Sonia, Masha, and Spike that was at McCarter in, I believe, about 2012, 2013, that went to Broadway, won some Tony Awards. But I think what Sarah and I are talking about is doing more of those kinds of new projects that have partners in cities beyond Princeton.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. So talk to us about Ride the Cyclone.
Yes. So speaking of new musicals, so this, I'm a big musical theater fan. I also love plays. I also love the stories that they tell, but they're really, especially coming out of a pandemic, they're like you were experiencing with Dreaming Zenzile, sort of the upbeat, the sort of the, I'm so emotional, I can't do anything else but sing. That's the musical at McCarter that's in rehearsal right now and starts performances just at the end of April and runs through the end of May. A Canadian musical called Ride the Cyclone, about these 6 kids who get on a roller coaster, and that ride gets interrupted, shall we say, and they then are in this sort of magical place where they have to talk about how they've lived their lives, and the person who has lived their life the best, the fullest, the most incredible, passionate way wins a special prize. And so the musical itself is this upbeat, fun, joyful look at what does it mean to live a life well lived.
So important these days, right? The
right?
multiple messages. I can't wait for it. That's really
exciting. No, and I think we're all there, right? I think many of us, all of us, really, during the pandemic, have been thinking about, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing what I should be doing? Should I be doing, something differently? Should I be contributing to society in a different way? And this musical beautifully, and such great songs, ask those questions.
That's exciting. Super exciting. So,
yeah.
Tell us,
go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and the, your viewers are going to be among the first to know this. After the show leaves McCarter, it's going to go to the arena stage in Washington, D.C. And so, again, not only will we get to share some expense on the front end, it's very exciting that our show will get seen by that market, by Washington, D.C. It's also a great thing, right? Ride the Cyclone is directed by our new artistic director, Sarah Rasmussen. And so I'm so happy that not only will Princeton audiences get to see what an incredible director she is, but now DC audiences will get to see it as well.
That's exciting. That's really, can't wait. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
But what, beyond the ride, what else are you excited about?
Well, I think what we're doing with Paula Vogel and Bard at the Gate, the continuation of that project. We've done 4 films of that work so far, and we'll do 4 more in the next fiscal year for us. But the other thing that I like about that Paula Vogel is the projects that we're doing live on film, and we have access to them for at least 5 years. And so one of the new things that we're trying to figure out is, how do we're going to have to market those pieces very differently than, say, Ride the Cyclone, right? Like Ride the Cyclone, see it in Princeton. You don't see it in Princeton, you could go to DC, but that becomes harder. But like with these films, but 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, we released a new Bard at the Gate film, and you don't have that same sort of marketing gimmick of like, see it now before it disappears. You've got 5 years to see it. And so that's a different way to communicate than theater marketing departments traditionally do, but it's also incredible opportunity. I can sell tickets to that for 5 years now, not just 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Now, what about, we always say we're in the age of the golden age of content, right? How do you guys see that landscape, the Netflixes and Amazons of the world? How does that sort of affect the theater nonprofit industry?
I think in a couple of different ways, right? Like the live performance and digital performance are manifestly different things, right? That experience of sitting in a theater, the lights go down, the orchestra tunes up, like there's an emotional experience to that that's different than when I'm sitting on my couch and I'm trying something on Netflix or that. I do think that the two forms are very complementary, right? The explosion of content and voices on these digital streaming services, I think, create an awareness of different types of storytelling that make it easier for people to try things in the theater, right? I think about growing up and really being only able to see, popcorn movies that are a bunch of white people in an American environment doing things, right? And now I can watch soap operas from Korea. I can watch really interesting movies from South Africa. I can enjoy documentaries from all over the world. And I think that familiarity now makes it more likely that people are going to look and say, well, look, they're doing these plays by a bunch of different writers that I don't maybe know as well, or maybe I've never heard of, but I've had such a good experience on these streaming services trying things I've never done before that I'll give it a shot and we'll see how it goes.
Got it. So what can we learn from you and your experiences? What can leaders learn? Particularly as we come out of this pandemic, what's one thing you want to share with us?
I really think that this is a moment of extreme change, right? Not just in the American theater, but in almost every aspect of our lives. And so much of being a leader is often about, working with your staff, working with your board, and trying to figure out, well, how do we do what we do today? How do we do it cheaper, faster, better? How do we increase our ROI tomorrow? And I think this is a moment that we really have to be asking ourselves different questions. 5 years from now, the world is going to be a very different place than it is today. And so what are the experiments? What are the investments that we're making in people, in ideas, in technologies that are going to get us ready for that world 5 years from now?
Great insights there. This has been great. Mike, thank you for doing it. One thing we do for all the podcasts is we ask folks to share a poem or a saying or something. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the poetry today. Although April is the cruelest month, sort of comes to mind with the weather that we've had recently. But no, so my email signature, which I've had for longer than almost for my entire career now, I sign every email onward and upward, Mike. And I sort of like the positivity of that. I like the idea that no matter how bad or awful or scary or unsure we may be today, onward and upward, we're going to get through it. We're going to move forward, and it's going to be better tomorrow.
That's beautiful, and I love seeing that when I see your emails, because it is an important reminder about positivity in the future, right? So
right.
Thank you for sharing that. This has been great, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.